Welcome to Eclipse Overland. My name is Andre. Today we will do an episode on replacing your clutch. Now, I think the first step is to, if you have your licensed disc, take that to the part supplier. Ask around for prices because they can be very expensive. Buy a clutch kit. I will be explaining to you quickly what I used when I changed my clutch, lessons learned, and obviously later in the episode I'll do a step-by-step what you need to follow when you change your clutch. I've learned my lesson the hard way, so hopefully this will make life a lot easier for you. So what I've used, and I've just written them down for me to remember as I'm getting older, I said clutch kit, and then a spanner set that you can use. And you'll most probably be only using the 12, 13, 17, 14, and then if you have a socket set, get that one, especially if you can have the extensions that goes with it, because in some places you'll have to get quite nifty to get the exhaust pipe loose, so and extensions will be able to help you with that. Wrench, as I said, with the extensions, a screwdriver, especially if you've got a long one, but a wider tip, if you can say that. Jacks, but then also your jacks that supports, they will keep your car up when you remove your jacks. And what I've just used a ramp, but you'll see that on the video, the ramps that I put on. But it obviously makes it more difficult when you need to drop your whole bell housing and move it backwards, because then your space becomes a lot smaller at the back. Obviously your brake fluid, in my case I use the .4, which is a requirement for the clutch if you want to get to the point where you need to bleed it. Then if you have a 500ml bottle with a cap, and that obviously depends on what you want to use and what process you want to use to bleed, so we'll get that to the later discussion as to the different bleeds that you can do for your clutch. And then obviously if you've got a catchment holder for that oils and whatever you are draining, so to make sure that if you can capture it and catch it, if you can call it, and then get that into a bottle, and then obviously take it to the necessary people that can recycle it or dispose of. Enjoy the episode with me, lessons learned. You'll hear me moaning under the car, but yeah, enjoy it. And later in the episode I will have a discussion on steps that will hopefully help you in your process. Enjoy it. The most important part is to get these off. I've started loosening them already a bit. And now, most important is now to get this off, so that I can get under the boot, because this is the boot. I need to remove this boot off so that I can get this disconnected, the lever is disconnected. I'm busy with that, and also going to be taking off and disconnecting the battery as well. First one I removed is this back part of the Pajero, which is your like little storage compartment. Took two screws off that was here. It was a bit difficult, and then two that was in here, and then I removed this so I can get hold of this screw that was in there. Loosened that one, took this one off where the handbrake is, took that part off, and I can actually now take this off. I'm not going to unplug everything, so this is where I'm now, and I'm going to unfasten this now. Taking the screws off, putting this harness away. Okay, looks like I'm going to do this without. Very careful with this boot so I don't damage it. So underneath there is a small boot that I also need to loosen, and then I can take all of this off. Let me first see what I can do there. We've taken those bolts off where this was on, and busy with this as well, so that this can come off as well. We could not get that transmission box removed. It's still sticking there. We think it's a top pin that's still holding onto it. So what I've done now this morning is drained the transmission liquid, and I will be draining the oil as well now to see if I can make the box and everything lighter and easier to be moved to the back, because that seems to be a problem at this stage. You'll also see that this one looks different, and what we've done is, on a previous occasion, actually very much trouble, we actually removed the bolt, and then what we've done then is welded a lug on it, so it's a lot easier to remove, especially in the bush or wherever, and you need to work on something or replace something, then you can do that. This is what we have done. One of the reasons why we cannot disconnect this transmission bell housing away from there, it is because of the thrust bearing that's still holding onto the clutch. So I've pulled this rubber away from this lever, and then just this actually goes in there. Let's see if I can do this quickly with one hand. This is where what actually goes in there, and this is connected there. So this one is actually going in there. But anyway, so I don't have round holes, I've actually got squares. So I've pulled the rubber on that side as well. So I'll be going through there now and see if I can disconnect the thrust bearing. I'll be working through those two gaps. Let's see what I can do. That's the one we need to get loose. So I'm trying to get a light in there as well. Let's see it better. There we go. That's the one still holding on. So that's the bearing, the push bearing that we need to get released, and then we'll disconnect the bell housing. What I've done is moved the bell housing closer to the engine, that it looks like as if it's connected again. There was a rubber there earlier that goes around that. I removed that as well. Removed that rubber so that this can actually move forward to there. So what I've done then is actually pull that lever, that one, I've pulled it tight to that corner, so that means that whole release bearing is stuck to the other side. And then what I've done is used a flat screwdriver and actually wedged it in between the ring, and that actually now released the bearing. So now I should be able to pull the box out. So see how that goes. So what I've done is I've dropped this bell housing, pushed it back, and then to move it away from the clutch and the clutch plate, moved it away and now dropped it. But now the problem is most of the cars have only one cross member. This one has got a second one, but this is welded on, so you've got literally got the back of this bell housing resting. You can see there, it's resting on this. So what I've done is, when I've pushed it back, and to move it away, and then brought it forward again, and then started dropping it. So now it's out of the way, so I've actually moved it slightly across, and it's resting on this box that I've made with the wheels, caster wheels on. So I've pushed it slightly across out of the way, so that I should be able to clean this side as well as put the bearing on, clean this part up. Oh, sounds very, doesn't sound too good. And then obviously replace that as well. I removed all the bolts, and then there was pins that was holding it on, so I just slowly loosened it and pulled it off. So this is the clutch. Make sure when you remove it that you are sure which way around it is, so that you can follow the same procedure when you put your clutch back together. So obviously this side, which is the bigger side, is going to the inside of this. You can already see how thin it is and see all the marks that's on this one. It's very worn. Give you an idea, of the new one. With the new one, sorry, let me just, old one is on my left, new one on my right. You can definitely see it's well worn. Time for a new one. Okay, I'll be cleaning up the area where I've taken it out, and then start assembling. Got this removed, so now I can get this one slide out so that I can release this. This pin has now been removed, slides out on that side. So now this is loose, so now we can take it out. Supplied grease, and then obviously in that sleeve also put some grease on there, and there I've put grease on as well, just a bit, and you can definitely see it's moving a lot easier than the old one. So we're going to clean the boot there, that goes over there, and the boot that goes over there I'm going to clean up as well now from the grease that was on there. This one has got 3 pins where you can hook it on, and then there's one top and then 2 on the side where you can hook it on and then start putting on the bolts. Very important to make sure that this one, that part, is center to that ring, because this is where this part will actually be connecting to that one. And then obviously start, when you fasten the bolts, start from that side, crisscross, to make sure that you have an equal balance. And then I'm going to get the torque tool or the spanner, and then torque all of them to the right torque specifications to make sure. But again, go crisscross over the, when you start fastening to the next level. I normally call it, I hand fasten them and then torque them to the final level, and then from there on I will start lifting this bell housing, and then see if I can level it up with that, and then start with the assembling of everything. In the case where a slave cylinder was removed, you'll see that once you push this pedal down, it will stay down. So there is steps to take where you can see where there's a leak, or in this case I need to bleed the slave cylinder or the clutch, and I'll show you the steps. So obviously, so what I can do is first make sure there's enough brake fluid in there. In this case, this is where the cylinder is that I need to refill, and in this case I'm using .4 brake fluid. So I'm busy with wiring at the same stage while I've got everything opened. So what I've done is I've taken this bottle, I've taken an 8mm pipe, cut a hole in this one, in this bottle cap, push it right down to the bottom, put it in brake fluid so that I can see the air bubbles coming out. Made a smaller hole in there as well for the bubbles to come out. We get under the car, and this runs see if I can get a light on there. So there's the slave cylinder, and there's a bleed nipple there on top. So what I'll do is I'm going to press down on the pedal, the clutch pedal in the vehicle, and then slowly release the nipple so that it will let air out down the pipe. And I will be able to see the bubbles coming out. So if there's no more bubbles coming out, I will know it's I've bled it. What you can also do is slowly, because this slave cylinder is pushing into this fork that's involved, or lifting the thrust bearing. So this has got you can pump this as well to push the air out. So this one, see if I can get some light on there. You can push it flat, you can pump it up as well to make sure that all your brake fluid pumps through. Sorry, so I'm not getting a great. See, it pumps to make sure the brake fluid is also pumped slowly, not too fast, because it will create air bubbles. And then what I'll do now is release on the slide. This is a quarter turn on that nipple there, so that some of the air can come out. And then I'll repeat the process until there's no more air coming out which I could be able to see in that bottle. So yeah, see how it goes. This is the slave cylinder on the Pajero clutch system. I replaced mine. Just make sure that they give you the correct one. But this pin actually pushes against the fork, and in my case this one wasn't fully pushing out, so it meant that the seal somewhere was damaged or broken. Unfortunately we cannot get, or I couldn't get, a repair kit, and I had to buy a new one. I think it was about 400 Rand from Master Parts where I couldn't get it. This is the nipple where you can bleed your slave cylinder. This is where you fasten it to the car. This is where the .4 brake fluid or the liquid is coming in, and that obviously creates that pressure. Once you press your clutch, that goes in there and obviously creates that pressure, where this pin actually then pushes back on the fork and allows you to be able to change your gears. Slave cylinder taken apart. Now this is the rubber that is obviously damaged or not working so properly anymore. But I've seen videos where some people take water tape and then take this rubber off, put water tape over it, underneath it, sorry, and then pull that rubber over it again, obviously creating a bit of a height. But in my case, I don't want to take a chance. I'm getting stuck somewhere because my clutch is not working anymore, and I just replaced mine. But yeah, that gives you an idea on the slave cylinder. There's also different ways of bleeding your slave cylinder, which is, one of them is a gravity feed, where you connect your pipe, your bleeding pipe, onto this one and up into a bottle or into a holder, and then you would make sure there's enough brake fluid in your cylinder on top, and then it bleeds and as soon as it starts running more freely, you know that the clutch has been bled. The other one is obviously attach a clear pipe on top of it, and then put a spray bottle nozzle that you can spray, and then you will feed, and it will pull the brake fluid into the slave cylinder and out by the pipe, and then obviously you'll be able to spray out, and as soon as it comes through clearly, no bubbles, clear liquid that you can be able to spray out, then you know it's been bled. And then the other one is doing the clutch. Push the clutch in, keep it there, or if you have somebody, if not, then put a piece of wood in there, keep it there, bleed it. You can bleed it there, open it, let the .4 brake fluid come out, and then close it up again, release it again, your clutch in the car, and then press it once or twice, and then do the same all over again. You have to do it a couple of times, but yeah, hopefully that will help. But in my case, I've bled it, and then it ended up having a play on my clutch. And after I've done my settings in the car to get rid of the play, the clutch was working, no more problems with that. So I hope this helps. One of the things that you'll definitely need is patience as well to change your clutch, especially if you do it yourself. It can be done. I've done it. It takes me a bit longer, but I think the most time was wasted on a specific point that I will explain to you now. First thing that you need to do, disconnect your battery. Make sure you disconnect your batteries, and even if you can, take your battery out, and if you haven't charged it in a while, put it on charge, so that by the time that you've done the job, it's charged and everything's ready to go. Then get in the car and do your gear and super select shift levers. Take that out. There's a specific way, and I've shown it on the video as well, how you can take that out. Remove your tail shaft. That's your next one. That's step number 3. Drain your transmission fluid, unless you want to keep it in, but it just becomes a whole lot heavier moving everything backwards with all the liquids in. Remove your exhaust pipes. Step 5. Remove your starter motor, that small thingy, and the wires. Make sure that you know where they are, especially your negative, your earth wire. That's your most important one, because I had a problem with it later as well. Remove and move your slave cylinder. Move your slave cylinder out of the way. Don't disconnect it. Just move it away and put a tie wire, if you can. Put a tie wire on it so that it's to the one side and out of the way. And then start removing the bell housing bolts. Start removing the bell housing bolts. Don't take it off yet. Then your most important one, and that's where I said, or that long screwdriver, not a Phillips screwdriver, the flathead screwdriver tip. Because what you will need to do is those rubbers that's on the bottom of your bell housing, you'll see that when you start working on it, you need to remove those rubbers as well. The one that's got the lever on, you can just pull to the back and have a light, especially if you've got a headlight, that will be better, or a small torch that you can put in there so that you can see where you need to disconnect. Before you remove the bell housing, disconnect your thrust bearing. You'll see I've explained it step by step as well. I'll put in a link as well at the bottom of the description, a link as well to another YouTuber that explains it very well, how to disconnect it. Okay. Then once you've removed the thrust bearing and it's disconnected, now you need to make sure that at all stages your bell housing is supported. At no stage it needs to drop to the floor, because you can crack your bell housing. Make sure it's supported, but in the whole time you still have your support. So make sure that your cross member, the front cross member, it's still there while you're disconnecting. Once you got to the point where you disconnected your thrust bearing, then only disconnect or remove your front, your support. Okay, then make sure all your wiring are disconnected. That is step number 11. So make sure all your wiring is disconnected, because as soon as you start pulling the bell housing backwards, that's the first thing that's going to have tension. If you drop it, it's going to have tension on it and you're going to snap your wires. So start disconnecting your wires. Now remove all of it, and now you can start pulling your whole bell housing back. But at all stages, make sure you got your supports underneath. Step number 12. Now you can move your transmission and bell housing backwards. But remember, in my case, the Pajero has got a second, which is your back cross member. So I had to move mine onto that cross member and move it backwards, and the whole time making sure the front is supported. You cannot move it. You pull it forward, and then you've got to drop it and then move it backwards. It becomes too many steps. Unless you've got a jack that lifts up the whole car, then you can maybe do it. But in my case, I just moved it backwards on it, because you can still then work the front part and the back part. Step number 12. Now you obviously moved everything backwards, and now you've got your access to all your clutch, where you can have your clutch kit replaced, as well as your fork with that release bearing that you can replace. Then you've got both parts that you have access to. Then 13, step number 13 is remove your pressure plate and clutch. Make sure how it is put together, what goes where. And in my case, photos helps. Then you make sure that everything is in the right place. That's step number 13. Remove your pressure plate and clutch. 14 is clean up before starting to replace clutch anything. Get yourself a brake cleaner or electrical contact cleaner. Spray it, wash it. And in my case, I used petrol. That was easy accessible to me. Clean it up inside, make sure that everything is clean. Make sure you put new gloves on, because once you start working on your pressure plates and your clutch, you don't want any of your finger marks on that clutch. It needs to be clean, because otherwise you'll have slip. Okay, that's number 14. Make sure that you have everything clean. Then, when you buy your clutch kit, you won't necessarily get a clutch alignment tool. So that's the thing that you put in to make sure that once you put your clutch on and your pressure plate on, to make sure that it aligns everything, because it makes it a lot easier when you put your everything, when it connects again, that everything is aligned. So if you can, get yourself, because if you buy your clutch kit, you're not necessarily going to get an alignment tool. In my case, I put a bolt, long bolt in there, aligned it, checked it, and made sure it works. Not necessarily might work for you, it worked for me. And then there is specific places that you need to lubricate. Follow the instructions on the clutch kit. There is instructions on there. Make sure that you lubricate only the parts that needs to be lubricated, and the quantity. Don't over lubricate, because if that wheel spins and it's over lubricated, the seal or whatever will then, yeah, it's not a good thing. Just don't over lubricate it. Then the next one, bleed the slave cylinder, and once completed, check the clutch play. This is where I've learned my lesson, because when I bled it, and I bled it about 5-6 times, and it didn't want to work. I still didn't have, because the thing is, when you have your car off, you'll be able to get your gears, no problem, once you put everything back together. Problem is only that when you switch your car on, you cannot get clutch. So that's the thing you need to watch out for. In my case, I didn't check the play on the clutch after I've done the bleeding. So you need to check the play on the clutch. You can get underneath it. I'll see if I can put a link also in the description from another guy that had done that, the adjustments on the play. And it shows you there's 2 settings. There's a pin that you can turn out, but then there's also one on the top that you can adjust. So make sure that you do that as well, because once I've done that, I think 5 minutes later, I had no problems anymore. So there's different bleeds that you can do. There is one that you normal, where you push your clutch in, and then you open the nipple at the back, bleed it, and then repeat the process until you have no more air. There's one that you've got with a spray head that you can connect to your bleed nipple, and then you basically nozzle it out. Make sure that at all stages you have enough .4 liquid in your cylinder in front, to make sure when you do that, you don't bleed it dry, because once you do bleed it dry, you're going to do the process all over again. So bleed it, but you can use a nozzle, spray it until you have no more air, then it's done, you can close it. The other one is when you make sure you liquid in, you turn open your bleeding nipple, and then the liquid just runs out. It will be very slow, but eventually will pick up speed. And as soon as the liquid starts running more freely, you can close it. It should then be bled. Or the other one is then bump your clutch the whole time. Once you've done all of that, bump your clutch a couple of times to make sure that that action will then make sure that the air pockets or the air bubbles comes out at the cylinder in front. So once that's done, that's what I said, make sure that you have checked your play, make sure the play is okay. Okay, then last one, I'm not a mechanic, whatever works for you. If you have questions, there's a lot of videos, but in what I've explained to you today was the processes that you need to follow, because a lot of videos do not explain you each, because I have not disconnected my thrust bearing and I was trying to get the bell housing off. I've done all the other steps trying to get the bell housing off, but I couldn't get it off. I was under impression it was a pin or something that was stuck on the top, or a bolt or whatever, and I could not move it. And then literally went through the holes and checked. I said that there's the thrust bearing that's still connected. I had to bring everything back again. I didn't connect it necessarily, but then went in with a screwdriver and managed to disconnect it, and then only I could remove the whole bell housing. So make sure you follow the steps. Hopefully that will help you. All the best. I'm not a mechanic, as I said, but hopefully that will help you to try and do it yourself. For me, the whole thing is, if I can do it myself and I get stuck on the road somewhere or out in the bush, I can do it myself. I know what spanners to take with me. I know what's needed to get it done. So I'm trying to do it with the least amount of equipment, and so that if I get stuck out in the fields or somewhere, I can do it myself, or if anything breaks, I know exactly what is where and what I need to fix. Hopefully that helps. All the best changing your clutch.